In this video, we'll be looking at how to set up and use the timer function in Propresenter, as well as some examples such as displaying a timer on a stage display or in an audience presentation. Let's get started. So once we're in Propresenter, our timers live up the top here in the middle section of our toolbar. If we open this, you'll see I've already set up 3 different timers. So we're going to discuss a few different ways you can do timers, and there's 3 types of timer that you can use in Propresenter. So the first timer here is a countdown timer. Now this first box is just the name of your timer, and I've just labeled them like this to make it easy to understand. So we've got a countdown timer. So in this box here, I can choose countdown, countdown to a time, and elapsed time. We'll discuss this with the other examples here. So my countdown timer is something where I want the item to last a certain amount of time and count it down. So for me, if I'm at church and I have, say, an MC spot at the start, or it might be something like announcements, and I might have 5 minutes allocated to the announcement section of the service, I'm going to put a 5-minute timer in there, and then we're going to use that timer to display on the stage display. So the person on the stage can see the timer, but no one else can. Now over here we've got a couple more options. So the overrun option means when this timer reaches 0, so it's counting down, when it gets to 0, do we want it to stop at 0, or do we want to keep going and show how far over it's gone? So it'll put a minus in front of it and just keep on running. So I like to do that because sometimes things go over time and they need to because there's more stuff in that section, and that's okay. But we still want the person on the stage to be aware of how far over they are so that they're not just going on and on and on. So I like to overrun my countdown timers sometimes. Our second timer here is what I've called the church countdown. So this is the countdown to the start of church, or the time that church starts. So in this one here, I'm choosing countdown to a time. So counting down to a time. Now my time, as in time on the clock, is 10 a.m. So church starts at 10 a.m. I'm going to count down to that time so that church always starts. So this is really handy if you want to do a countdown on the screens in the church, or if you want to do it in the foyer so people know how long to go, and so at 2 or 3 minutes they could come into church. Or you might want to count down in the foyer to when the doors open instead of counting down to the start of the service, so people know when the doors are going to open so they can come in, which might actually be before the service. And so some churches might have a countdown to doors open at 9:55 and also a countdown to church starting at 10, and then one might be in the foyer and one might be in the church. So we can do lots of different things. So 10 a.m. and we can just choose whatever we want in here. We can overrun it so it keeps counting down if we want. And if I click start here, you'll notice there's 20 minutes and 5 seconds to go because it's currently 9:40 or thereabouts. And so that is how we count down to a particular time. So if I stop that, I can reset them and they'll be ready to go again as well. And the last one here is a count up timer, or an elapsed time. So I've just named it count up. It's called elapsed time. So that's when we go from 0 and we count up. So we can start at 0, or we can start at 5 minutes, or we can start at whatever we want to start at. We can also put in an end time if we want. So if we want it to go from 0 to 5 minutes, it will end at 5 minutes. Or we can just put no limit and let it count forever. We can overrun it as well. So if we put an end time, we can have it keep running. And if I click start, you'll see it just counts up. So we're going to stop that. We're going to reset it. Now there's a couple of little tricks with timers that are really important. The actual timer and setting them up is fairly straightforward, because in here, if I just go plus down here to add a timer, got my timer, I choose which type of timer, how long I want it, do I want it to overrun, and then I can start, reset, all of that. But there's lots of other things we can do. So we can put them to a slide to automate it, so when a certain slide is hit, the timer starts. We've also got to think about whereabouts we want our timer to display. So do I want my timer to display on my screen for my audience? Do I want it on my stage screen? Do I just want it in Propresenter so that I have an idea of how long something took? And if so, how does that work? Because what you can do is you could start a timer on a certain slide for, say, an elapsed timer like this. And so I might be flicking through my slides, and so I might want to just know how long the pastor preached, but he might not want to know how long he's preached on the screen. And so we can have the first slide start the timer, the last message slide stop the timer, and then the time will live here, because once it's stopped, it stays there. And at the end of the service, we can go through and check it, or we can have it automatically reset every time. But the trick is you need to make sure all your timers are reset before your service starts again. When we first started using Propresenter, we used timers, but we'd forget to reset them before the next service, or we'd forget to stop them sometimes, which is okay, because if you can't see them anywhere, it's all right if the timer's running, but we just need to make sure they're reset, ready to go. So a little trick that we use is on our very first slide of church, we have a reset all timers action, and it resets all our timers for us when that slide is hit. But we'll discuss that a little bit more soon, but just be aware they do need to be reset back to 0 before we start again. So that's setting up timers. Now, when we want to show a timer to someone, we've got to go and put it on a slide. So let's go and have a look at, say, our countdown timer, and let's put it on our stage display. So to get to stage displays, I'm going to More, Stage Editor. Now this is a stage display that's already set up, and so what this shows is it's going to show the text on the current slide that's up on the audience screen, and it's going to show the text that's on the next slide over here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put our timers down the bottom here, so that the person on the stage can see the timer as well as the slide now and the next slide too. So we'll have another video about stage displays that goes into depth, but for now we're just going to go and do a quick timer. So to add things to a slide, we go to our plus, and we're going to come down, and these are different to our normal slide editors, but we've got a lot of different options, and we're just going to choose timer. So in this one, we want our countdown timer, because that's the one that's going to count down for, say, our MC spot. And I'm also going to put on here my church countdown timer as well, so that we can tell how long it is to church if we're up on the stage before church has started. So we might put them next to each other like this. Now, there's a few little tricks we can do with these as well. Number one is, if that's my church countdown and that's my countdown timer, now I might not want to have all of these numbers. So this is hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. So we go into text up here. So this is our editing, and we can choose which ones we display. So we might turn off the milliseconds, and we might turn off the hours, because it doesn't really matter if there's more than 1 hour before these things start. And we know our countdown timer is only 5 minutes. So it's only ever going to show 5.00 as its maximum. Our church countdown might show like 120 minutes if we're practicing 2 hours before church, and that's okay. So we can do that. The other thing that's helpful that some people like to do is you might want to do a color trigger. So over here on the right, we can link a color trigger to a time. So if I've got my church countdown, I might want to go into here and let's add a color trigger. And so we might say at 5 minutes. So let's go into here and let's go color trigger at 1 minute left. We're going to go red. Why are we doing that? Because our countdown timer, if we go back up to timers, our countdown timer is 5 minutes, and it's counting down from 5 minutes. And so we want to show it as red when there's 1 minute left. So the person is aware it changed, and it might catch their attention a little bit, and they can see they're down to their last minute. In our church countdown, we're not going to do that, because our church countdown is linked to a time. So we might go into here, and we might go, okay, at 9:55, we want it to go red, or we might actually do yellow. And then at 9:59, we want it to go red, because we know there's only 1 minute left. And then everyone will get that and see that on the stage, and our musos will come out and we're ready to rumble them. And so we can do color triggers as well. Also really useful for your pastor if they're preaching, just so if you're counting down and they do like a 20 or 30 minute sermon, if they do their last couple of minutes in red, or you could do, if it goes over time, to turn it red. So in my countdown timer here, I could do it instead of 1 minute left, I could link it to, if it goes over time, we'll change it to red. So that's another handy feature we can do as well. So let's just have a look at what this looks like really quickly. So if I go into one of my playlists here and we get something up on the screen, here's our preview window, and we've got, we're glad you made it today. We've got our little logo. Now, if I change my screen to our stage screen, it's very small, but you'll see we've got our first current slide. We're glad you made it today. We've got our text on our next slide, all of this text, and we've got our timer sitting down the bottom here. So if I go into my timer and I click start, now this timer is starting. If I come down and I click my church countdown timer, you'll see it's counting down. We've got 12.5 minutes to go. And it's in yellow. So let's just go back and have a look, because it looks like we've set that up wrong. Because when I've done my church countdown, this one here can actually be set in minutes. So that's my mistake. So let's go 5 minutes and let's go 1 minute. So you live, you learn in Propresenter. We're doing this all live. Not much editing to these videos. So bear with me. 0, 1. So 1 minute countdown will be red. So now when we go back, and if we hit this slide again, and we run all of our timers, we'll notice that both timers are white and they're running. If I stop them, they'll stop, and if I reset them, they will reset. Now, the other thing you can do, which is sometimes useful, is sometimes people like to have multiple timers and different timers through their service. So I might have my MC spot timer, and I might want to add, say, my message timer, and they'll be slightly different. So let's go message timer. We might want to count down, and we want it to be, let's say we're going to give the pastor 20 minutes this week. We want it to overrun, and then it's working. So what I can do in my stage editor is then add my countdown timer. Sorry, wrong timer. Add my timer, my message timer. But I might not want to fill up my whole stage display with different timers. Instead, I might want to always have my timers in this one spot, which looks a little bit messy because now they're on top of each other. However, if I look down here on my left, I've got my different objects, and I can choose which one, and we can figure out which one's which, and we can hide and display them when they're active. So if we go over here to visibility, so I've got my message timer, I'm in shape on the editor, visibility, all of the following conditions are met. So this is saying I want this to be shown when these things happen. So we're going to choose a type, we're going to choose a timer, and I'm on message timer, so we're going to choose message timer is running. We want it to show. If you want the timer to disappear once it's counted down, you can choose has time remaining. But if you're overrunning your timer, it's going to disappear once it hits 0, and they won't be able to see it. So I like to do is running, and that should be fine for that one. Then we're going to go countdown timer, visibility, choose type timer, countdown timer. When it is running, we're going to show it. Same with our church countdown, visibility, choose type, timer, church countdown is running. And so what we can actually do now is if we go back here, you'll see there's no timers. But if I go into timers and I click start on this one, it shows up. If I click start on my church countdown, it shows up. If I click stop, it disappears. If I also run my message timer, both of them are on top of each other, which is a little bit annoying. But just think about, there's no point in my service that both my countdown timer, if I'm using it for an MC spot, and my message timer will be running at the same time. So that's just a little trick there that we can do to help out and save some space. Instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 timers across here all of the time, we could put them all on top of them here, and then everyone knows in church all our timers are always in this spot on the screen. It looks a little bit messy in here, but it's a nice little trick that we can use as well. Let's just edit this one while we're here real quick. We're going to go no hours, no milliseconds, and tidy it up a little bit. So let's put them all on top of each other on the left here. So that's our timers for our stage. If I wanted to show it in my actual presentation, We can also do that. So say a countdown timer for church. Let's go into this slide and edit it. What we do in here, if we click the plus, you'll notice there's no timer or anything like that. So what we actually need to do is create some text, and we're going to link that text to our timer. So this is our text box that we have here. Remember, you can go plus text if you don't have a text box. And when we select our text box, over in the text panel, we're going to come down and we're going to choose linked text. So that's sort of saying, where do we get our text from? We're not typing it in. Where can Propresenter find the text we want to use? And our source is going to be our timer. So you'll notice that this list is very similar to the stage display list. So if you're ever looking for something that's on the stage display for your audience, generally it's found in the linked text and the source. And we're just going to choose timer, and we're going to choose our church countdown. Again, we're going to get rid of the hours and the milliseconds, and we might want to add a trigger in here as well. So let's go with 1 minute to go. It's going to be red, and then we might want to go and add in a nice picture. So let's save that, go back to show, find our media bin, and we might want to just go down here. Let's find something that looks all right in our samples. That blue one looks all right. If we show this, let's just edit it really quickly, make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. Show. Now it's not showing. Why is it not showing? Because we're on our stage display. So we're going to go to screen 1. Our timer's there. It's really small because I haven't re-clicked my slide after editing it. There's my timer, but it's not playing. So we're on our church countdown, and we're going to start our church countdown. So now our timer is started. Now what I'm going to do here is just show you how we can automate our timers. So let's add a few more slides here, just so we've got a few to do some things with. And our timer is currently running. So let's just go in here and stop it so we don't get too confused. So what we can do is we can add actions to our slides. What that means is when I click this slide, something will happen. So if I right click and I go add action, I can choose different actions here. Now there is an action palette, so let's just have a very quick look. And there's lots of actions in here as well. And these are all different things you can assign to a slide. But for now, we're going to right click. We're going to go add action. We're going to go timer. And we're going to choose our church countdown timer, because this is our church countdown timer. And now once we've done that, we get a bunch of options. So we can start our timer when we hit this slide. We can stop it. We can reset it. So what we're going to do is we are going to start our timer. We're going to set our configuration. So you can edit your timer from in here. If I change anything in here, it will change it in here as well. I don't want to do that because it's already set up. So when I click this slide, my timer will start. This slide, nothing's going to happen. And this slide here, I'm actually going to add an action for my timer, church countdown, to stop. And this slide, I'm going to add an action for my church timer of my countdown to reset. Now, it's not going to be very easy to see that it's reset here, but let's have a look. At the moment, our timer is not running, so we're going to open this panel. If I click start, you'll notice it's started. If I pop that out and just move it down here so we can see. So it's started. Here's my timer, it's running. I hit this slide, my timer is stopped. I hit this one and it's reset. So what this does is you can set up your presentation for your timers to happen automatically. So for your countdown timer on your MC spot, you might have your first slide for your MC spot where the person gets up. It might have like their name, or it might have like a title, like announcements or something similar. You can assign the action to start the timer, and then it'll show it on the stage display. So if I go back to our stage screen and we click this one here, it started our countdown, and there is our countdown. If we click this one here, it's still there because it's running. If we click here, it's stopped. It's stopped, and so it's disappeared, and this one here will reset it. So it's pretty powerful stuff we can do once we work out and get our head around things, because it means we don't have to go into timers and click start and remember to do that in the middle of our service while we're doing 100 other things at the same time. So we can automate it. So MC spot, we might go start the timer on the first slide, flick through all our slides, and then the last slide we might have stop the timer. Now what I generally do, and this is what I was talking about before, is if I go to say my Sunday 9 a.m. playlist, and this is my service, generally what I do to make my life easier is I will add in one more slide somewhere. So it might be, here's our announcements, here's our countdown, and I might put one slide in here. So let's just add it really quickly. Add new slide. Before that countdown happens, we're going to add on this slide, action, timer, this timer, reset, this timer, reset. And I add all of my timers to reset on that very first slide, just so I know they've reset at the start of the service. Now what that means is that you just need to make sure whoever's running your Propresenter and your service doesn't go, oh, announcements, they're flicking through and then click this slide. They need to go through this slide and then to this slide. So just make sure you've got it set up well, that makes sense. This isn't the best example because if I click this, if I go from here and I click here, it's going to take off everything on my screen and then I'm going to my countdown timer. So we just want to be aware. That might be okay if there's no one in the church at the time and you can do that and then start your countdown timer. But it's a great idea to have a reset somewhere because you'll see start, reset. They're all back to where they need to be for the start of the service. If you forget that and these aren't back and this is still on, say, I don't know, 15 minutes left from last week, it's going to start from where it stopped last week. So just be aware it needs to be reset, but you can automate it. So that's lots of information about timers today. Hopefully that's helpful. Let us know in the comments or click the subscribe button if you've got any questions and we'll do our best to help you out. Thanks, guys.